The night my neighbor smashed his own car through his front door, I realized something was terribly wrong with the people living next door. But the truth is, the warning signs had been there long before that. 3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home together. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it was perfect for us. The neighborhood was quiet, the streets were clean, and the neighbors were the kind of people who waved when you passed them outside. Life felt stable for the first time in a while. Our next-door neighbors were especially nice. They were a friendly couple who had lived there for years. We talked occasionally over the fence while watering plants or walking our dogs. It was the kind of comfortable, neighborly relationship where everyone respected each other's space but still felt connected. So when they decided to move away about a year and a half later, we were actually a little sad. But then they mentioned something interesting. They were selling their house, and it was bigger than ours. Their place had things we didn't, like a driveway, a garage, and even a large bathtub. It felt like a small upgrade, but still in the exact same neighborhood we loved. The idea sounded almost too perfect. After talking it over for a few days, we decided to take the opportunity. We bought their house and moved next door, then put our old home on the market. Looking back now, that decision changed everything. When it came time to choose a buyer, we received several letters from interested people explaining why they wanted the house. One couple stood out to us. They were from Poland and wrote a heartfelt message about wanting to start a new chapter in a quiet neighborhood. They seemed polite and sincere. When we met them in person, they were friendly, though they spoke only English with us, even though we spoke Dutch as well. Still, nothing about them seemed strange. We showed them a few things about the house, how the heating system worked, where the water shutoff valve was, and a few small tips about the garden. It was just normal small talk between neighbors. Or at least, it felt normal at the time. But not long after they moved in, things started feeling off. At first, it was just random disturbances. Sometimes late at night, we would hear loud banging coming from their side of the wall. Other nights, music would suddenly start blasting at an insane volume. It wasn't every night. But when it happened, it was intense. Imagine being asleep at midnight and suddenly hearing heavy thuds against the wall like furniture being thrown around, or music so loud the bass vibrated through the floor. Each time it happened, it stopped just as suddenly as it started. It made us uneasy. We tried to brush it off as cultural differences, or maybe just people adjusting to a new home. But then came the first moment that made me question everything. One afternoon, I noticed our neighbor's car parked outside. Both sides of it were badly scraped. Not just a small dent or scratch, these were long, deep gouges that ran almost the entire length of the vehicle. It looked like the car had been dragged against something at high speed. Later that day, I casually asked him what happened. His explanation didn't make much sense. He said he scraped one side against a concrete pole and the other side against a trailer while turning. The story felt clumsy, but I didn't push it. A few weeks later, something even stranger happened. Around 6 in the evening, my phone rang. It was our neighbor. He sounded completely panicked. "There are people outside my house messing with my security cameras," he said. "Please check. Please call the police." I immediately looked outside, and he was right. 2 men were standing near his front door. They were clearly trying to break in. I called the police right away, but by the time officers arrived about 20 minutes later, the men were already gone. Right after the police showed up, the neighbor's wife pulled up in her car and ran inside frantically, calling out for their small French bulldog. Everything about the scene felt chaotic. Later that night, we checked the footage from our doorbell camera. What we saw made the situation even stranger. Before the break-in, the 2 men had been standing outside talking calmly. And they were speaking Polish. They were discussing which house to target. Nothing was stolen during the incident, and no one was caught. I told the police something felt suspicious, but they never contacted me again. A week later, I was at a friend's housewarming party when my partner texted me. "The music next door is ridiculously loud again," he wrote. A few minutes later, my phone rang. His voice sounded completely different, panicked. "You need to come home," he said. "What happened?" The neighbor's car just crashed through their own front door. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. When I arrived back on our street, The scene looked unreal. The neighbor's car had plowed straight through the front garden and smashed into the front door of their house. Two men were inside, quickly loading expensive electronics into the vehicle. Large flat-screen TVs, professional speakers, boxes of expensive gear, and my partner said something that made my stomach drop. They looked like the same guys from last week. This time, the police arrived much faster. 7 minutes after the call, the officers reached the car while the men were still loading it. They asked for identification. The men said they didn't have any. Then something bizarre happened. The driver looked directly at the officer and calmly claimed to be our neighbor, using our neighbor's exact name. But there was a problem. During the 9 months we'd lived next to him, our neighbor had never spoken a single word of Dutch. This man suddenly spoke fluent Dutch with a thick Polish accent. The officer clearly realized something wasn't right. And the moment he did, the driver slammed the car into reverse and tried to escape. What followed was a chaotic chase through our quiet neighborhood streets. The police eventually boxed the car in and arrested the two men. But while everything was happening outside, my partner heard something else. Movement inside the house. The officers searched the property again, and they found a third man hiding inside. As we were speaking with one of the officers about the damage to our garden, our doorbell suddenly rang. When we turned toward the door, I barely recognized the man standing there. It was our neighbor, but he looked like he had just survived a brutal fight. His face was swollen and covered in blood. One eye was completely shut. His mouth was torn open. His arm hung strangely at his side, covered with deep cuts that looked like defensive wounds. He looked exhausted, angry, and terrified all at once. The police officer tried to ask him questions, but the neighbor refused to cooperate. Without a statement, there wasn't much the officer could do. So eventually the police left. Later that night, the neighbor rang our doorbell again. This time, he was shaking. He admitted that he had cheated on his wife and claimed that she had hired people to hurt him. He begged us to let him sleep in our house. We were terrified. We didn't want to get involved in whatever was happening. Instead, my partner offered to drive him to the hospital. We dropped him off around 10:30 that night. Then we told him we were leaving town for the night because we didn't feel safe. But that wasn't true. We went home, locked every door, and sat quietly in the dark. Around 1 in the morning, our dog began to growl. It was a deep, low growl he only made when someone was outside the door. I checked the doorbell camera, and there he was, the neighbor, standing on our porch, ringing the doorbell over and over again. We didn't move. We didn't speak. We just watched the screen. After several long minutes, a car turned onto our street. The neighbor immediately panicked. He jumped off our porch and hid behind our cars in the driveway, crouched low in the shadows. Watching that bloodied man hiding behind our own car in the middle of the night was one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. The car stopped. A woman stepped out. It was his wife. She walked toward their house, then suddenly paused. She had seen him. She slowly walked toward the driveway. When she stepped into the streetlight, she began crying. Not normal crying. A deep, haunting wail that echoed through the quiet street. She kept asking him questions between sobs. He didn't say a word. Eventually, they both got into the car, and they drove away. We didn't see either of them for 3 days. When the wife finally returned alone, she told us something chilling. She said she didn't think she would ever see her husband again. To this day, I still don't know what really happened. Maybe it was drugs. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was something much darker. But after everything that happened, I realized something important. Some secrets are better left alone, and sometimes the most dangerous stories are the ones happening right next door. If this story gave you chills, hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another terrifying tale.